September 19, 1944, or 6:15 hours near Arracourt in eastern France. A heavy morning fog covered the Lorraine countryside as the Panthers of Germany's 113th Panzer Brigade moved toward their objectives. According to the brigade's after-action report filed with 5th Panzer Army headquarters, contact came quickly. At approximately 6:20 hours, the lead elements ran into American tank destroyers of an unknown type. These vehicles showed incredible speed and agility. They opened fire on German tanks at ranges of 400 to 800 meters, then quickly shifted positions before counterfire could be directed. Within the first 5 minutes of battle, 3 Panthers were already destroyed. Through the mist, German crews began hearing a strange noise they had never experienced before. A sharp, high-pitched whine that sounded more like an aircraft than a tank. Out of the fog, low silhouetted vehicles appeared, fired several rapid shots, and then vanished before the heavy German turrets could line up a response. Each of these attacks lasted less than 20 seconds. That morning, across the battlefield, 39 German tanks from the 113th Panzer Brigade, commanded by Colonel Erich von Fonsendorf, were about to learn a devastating truth. The Americans had built a tank destroyer capable of reaching 55 miles per hour, faster than any armored vehicle in service at the time. German doctrine was built on the assumption that tank destroyers had to be slow and heavily armored, like their own Jagdpanther. But the American M18 Hellcat was designed around an entirely new idea: speed as protection, mobility as survival, and agility as a weapon. The math of armored combat suddenly changed. A Panther's turret could take between 18 and 60 seconds to complete a full rotation, depending on engine speed. The Hellcat's hydraulic turret, however, could traverse 360 degrees in just 24 seconds, completely independent of engine RPM. At top speed, the M18 could cover 400 meters before a Tiger's turret even managed to rotate 90 degrees. This revolutionary design philosophy began in December 1941. At a classified War Department meeting, Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Davis Bruce, a career cavalry officer, argued that America needed a different approach. German blitzkrieg tactics had already shocked the world. Poland had collapsed in 35 days. France, with the largest army in Europe, had fallen in only 6 weeks. The Wehrmacht's armored divisions had proven that speed and concentrated power could overwhelm any static defense. Bruce believed America should not try to copy German tanks gun for gun or armor for armor. Instead, he envisioned a fast vehicle that would hunt tanks like cavalry once hunted infantry, striking with speed, surprise, and maneuver. The new tank destroyer force adopted a simple motto: seek, strike, destroy. By December 1941, the Ordnance Department issued requirements for a fast, mobile tank destroyer. The specifications evolved throughout 1942, beginning with a 37mm gun, then 57mm, then 75mm, and finally the more powerful 76mm. Engineers considered the Christie suspension but ultimately switched to torsion bars. In April 1943, Buick unveiled the T-70 prototype. On testing grounds, it demonstrated speeds previously thought impossible for a tracked vehicle. German intelligence received reports of American development but dismissed them. Wehrmacht doctrine, based on years of battlefield experience, taught that only heavy armor and large-caliber guns could produce effective tank destroyers. Their own Jagdpanther weighed 46 tons and mounted an 88mm gun. To them, the idea of a 17 7-ton vehicle with armor just 25mm thick seemed foolish. Then came May 23, 1944, during the breakout at Anzio. The Hermann Göring Panzer Division first faced the M18 in battle. Their daily combat report to the 14th Panzer Corps noted, "Enemy employs new tank destroyer type. Vehicle speed estimated 70-80 km/h. 2 Panzer Vs destroyed before enemy vehicle withdrew. Return fire ineffective due to target's rapid movement." Crews reported spotting vehicles moving like nothing in their recognition manuals. Low, fast machines racing across the battlefield at speeds usually seen only in wheeled reconnaissance cars, not in tracked vehicles armed with 76mm guns. These reports made their way to Berlin but were dismissed as exaggerations caused by combat stress. By September 1944, denial was no longer possible. Patton's Third Army had pushed deep into Lorraine, stretching German defenses to the breaking point. Hitler personally ordered a counteroffensive to retake Nancy and destroy the American spearhead. General Hasso von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army prepared for the attack with the newly created 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades, both equipped with brand new Panthers fresh from the factory. Unbeknownst to them, the U.S. 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, attached to the 4th Armored Division's Combat Command A, had already positioned their M18 Hellcats around Arracourt. At dawn on September 19th, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's platoon of Hellcats opened fire with lethal efficiency. According to the 704th's after-action report, Leiper's men engaged German armor at ranges of 400 to 800 yards, destroying 15 tanks in just 30 minutes using hit-and-run tactics. On the flank, Sergeant Henry R. Hartman's Hellcat achieved remarkable success. His gunner knocked out 6 Panthers in rapid succession. Each time they fired, the crew immediately relocated before German gunners could react. For his leadership and bravery, Hartman was later awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. The 113th Panzer Brigade suffered devastating losses. German divisional records from that day reported, "Brigade engaged enemy tank destroyers near Arracourt. Enemy vehicles displayed unprecedented mobility. Estimated speed 80+ km/h. Losses: 39 tanks destroyed, 11 damaged. Enemy losses estimated at 3 to 4 vehicles." When German forces finally captured an intact M18 near Metz in November 1944, they tested it thoroughly. The technical report forwarded to the Inspector General of Panzer Forces confirmed specifications that challenged every belief about tank design. Weight tossing in metric tons, Panther 44 8 tons. Maximum speed 88. 5 km/h confirmed on test track, Panther 46 km/h. Engine Wright R975C4 radial, 400 horsepower. Later production models with improved power-to-weight ratio of 22. The results left German officers stunned. The M18 Hellcat had proven that speed itself could be the most effective form of armor. The German evaluation of the M18 highlighted a dramatic contrast in performance compared to their own tanks. The Panther offered 15.6 horsepower per ton. The Tiger I delivered 12.8 horsepower per ton, but the M18 Hellcat reached an incredible 22.6 horsepower per ton, giving it unmatched speed and agility on the battlefield. Its turret could complete a 360-degree rotation in just 24 seconds, thanks to a hydraulic system that worked independently of the engine. The armor, however, was extremely light, just 25 mm on the turret front and 13 mm on the hull sides. Its main weapon was the 76 mm M1A1 or M1A2 gun, mounted on a chassis powered by a Wright R975C4 aircraft-derived radial engine. It used a Torquematic automatic transmission with 3 forward speeds, eliminating the need for clutch control. The German report summed it up clearly. Vehicle achieves performance through extreme design philosophy. Armor protection sacrificed for mobility. Engine is aircraft-type air-cooled radial. Automatic transmission eliminates clutching, permitting driver to concentrate on maneuvering. Combat effectiveness depends entirely on mobility and crew training. The numbers left no room for doubt. German turret traverse depended heavily on engine RPM and varied widely. A Tiger I traversed at 6 to 19 degrees per second, requiring anywhere from 60 to 19 seconds for a full rotation. Early Panther models managed just 6 degrees per second, a full minute for a complete turn. Late Panther models improved to 19 degrees per second at 2,000 RPM, giving them a best-case time of 19 seconds. The Tiger II performed slightly better at 15 to 24 degrees per second, requiring between 24 and 15 seconds for a full rotation. The M18's hydraulic system was steady at 15 degrees per second regardless of engine speed. This consistency was critical when tracking multiple targets or responding to fast-moving enemies. At full speed, the M18 could cover incredible ground in very little time. It reached 400 meters in just 16 seconds, 800 meters in 33 seconds, and crossed a 1,000-meter killing field in only 41 seconds. By comparison, a Panther required 30 to 60 seconds simply to rotate its turret 180 degrees when following a moving target. This overwhelming speed advantage transformed American anti-tank tactics. After the Battle of Arracourt, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion revised its manual for M18 deployment. The doctrine emphasized mobility over static firepower. Crews were instructed to fire 3 to 5 rounds from concealment, immediately move at least 200 yards, and then re-engage from a different angle. No M18 was to remain in one spot for longer than 60 seconds if under enemy observation. This shoot-and-scoot method proved devastating. German crews, trained for deliberate long-range engagements, found themselves unable to adapt to opponents who refused to fight on their terms. December 19, 1944. The Ardennes Offensive, Hitler's last major gamble, was in its third day. The German 2nd Panzer Division pushed toward the critical crossroads at Nouville, defended by Team de Sobry and elements of the 101st Airborne Division. Only 4 M18s from the 609th and 705th Tank Destroyer Battalions stood in their way. Thick morning fog concealed German movements, but it also gave the Hellcats an advantage. According to the 705th Battalion's combat report, the 4 M18s engaged the German column by rapidly shifting firing positions within the fog. Their mobility created the illusion of a much larger American force. The result was stunning. 24 German tanks destroyed at the cost of just 1 M18, lost to artillery fire. The Hellcats' tactics were simple but brutally effective. Crews fired 2 or 3 rounds, then immediately reversed at top speed into the fog. By the time German tanks aligned their turrets on the muzzle flashes, the Hellcats had already shifted 200 to 300 yards and opened fire again from a new direction. The German 2nd Panzer Division recorded in its war diary, encountered strong tank destroyer resistance at Nouville. Enemy vehicles of high mobility operating in fog, unable to effectively engage due to rapid displacement of targets. Attack suspended pending reinforcement. That suspension delayed the German advance for 48 critical hours, enough time for the 101st Airborne to reinforce Bastogne and secure the crossroads, a turning point in the campaign. By late November 1944, German commanders were searching for ways to counter the Hellcat threat. General Hasso von Manteuffel issued new instructions to the 5th Panzer Army. His orders acknowledged the speed of the M18, 80+ kilometers per hour on roads, 40+ cross-country. Crews were warned not to try tracking the Hellcat with their turrets. Instead, they were told to pre-position turrets on likely movement routes, use infantry armed with Panzerfausts on the flanks, and rely on artillery to bombard suspected firing points. Pursuit was strictly forbidden. The M18s would always outrun them. Despite these adjustments, the results did not change. The Hellcat's speed advantage was simply too great, and German crews could not abandon years of training that prioritized precision over rapid reactions. Production figures told the story of American industrial power. Between July 1943 and October 1944, Buick built 2507 M18s. Production peaked at 267 units in November 1943. The original contract called for 8,086, but this was reduced as the war drew to a close and doctrine shifted. Each vehicle cost $55,230 in 1943. Expensive compared to other American armored vehicles, but still efficient thanks to mass production techniques. By comparison, a German Panther cost approximately 117 to the 100 Reichsmarks and took far longer to produce due to its complex transmission and final drive system. The M18 had been designed with production in mind. Its Wright R975 radial engine was already in large-scale use for aircraft and other vehicles. The Torquematic transmission reduced the need for advanced driver training. Its open-topped turret simplified construction, and wherever possible, designers used standard automotive components. At Camp Hood, Texas, the Tank Destroyer Training Center developed specialized courses for Hellcat crews. Drivers were trained in high-speed maneuvering, quick acceleration and braking, and how to exploit terrain at full throttle. They practiced maintaining top speed while still giving gunners a stable platform during brief halts. Gunners learned rapid target acquisition and how to fire accurately on the move. Together, this combination of design, training, and doctrine made the M18 Hellcat one of the most effective tank destroyers of World War II. German gunners were trained to fire with patience, precision, and accuracy at long range. In contrast, M18 Hellcat crews were taught a completely different style. Their gunners were expected to shoot quickly at moderate ranges, trading a lower first-round hit rate for faster reaction and rapid engagement. Commanders were trained in awareness and flexibility. They were expected to make instant decisions, coordinate closely with other M18s, and always think several steps ahead. Before firing even a single round, a commander had to know the next 2 positions his Hellcat would move to. The psychological profile of Hellcat crews also stood apart from those in heavy tanks. Recruiters looked for men who could handle risk, make fast decisions, and trust speed and maneuver over the comfort of heavy armor. But the M18's greatest weakness was obvious. Its armor was dangerously thin. The The thickest protection was just 25mm on the turret front, with only 13mm on the hull sides. That meant it could be penetrated by nearly every German anti-tank weapon, even 20mm anti-aircraft guns at close range, 37mm anti-tank guns at any range, infantry weapons like Panzerfausts, artillery fragments, and in some cases even heavy machine guns hitting the side armor up close. This vulnerability shaped how the Hellcat was used. The rules for crews were clear. Never stay exposed under enemy observation. Avoid fighting in cities where mobility was limited, and keep at least 500 meters away from enemy infantry. Terrain masking was to be used constantly, and coordination with friendly infantry was required to suppress anti-tank threats. Over time, Hellcat crews developed an almost instinctive awareness of their surroundings, constantly scanning for threats, escape routes, and new firing angles. By the end of the war, Hellcat units had impressive records. Verified kill claims by battalion included 7th Tank Destroyer Battalion, 106 enemy tanks destroyed, 603. Tank Destroyer Battalion, 92 enemy tanks destroyed, 69. Tank Destroyer Battalion, 67 enemy tanks destroyed, 705. The Tank Destroyer Battalion, 89 enemy tanks destroyed, 85. The Tank Destroyer Battalion, 51 enemy tanks destroyed. At maximum strength in March 1945, 540 M18s were in combat. Losses totaled 216 vehicles. This gave the Hellcat a kill-to-loss ratio of 2-3 to 1 in Europe. Engagements averaged around 650 meters and usually lasted just 2-3 minutes. Although respectable, this ratio fell short of pre-war expectations. More importantly, about 70% of M18 combat missions ended up supporting infantry rather than hunting enemy tanks. The original U.S. tank destroyer doctrine assumed the Germans would launch mass armored assaults, but these rarely happened. In Italy, the 85th Tank Destroyer Battalion discovered that even in mountainous terrain, the Hellcat's mobility offered surprising advantages. Using narrow mountain roads, the M18s could quickly shift between threatened sectors where heavier Allied tanks struggled. During the Gothic Line battles, they would dash to elevated positions, fire into valleys below, and then move before German artillery could retaliate. German units accustomed to slow Allied movements in such terrain were repeatedly caught off guard by how quickly Hellcats could appear. A German Corps-level report stated, "Enemy tank destroyers demonstrate ability to concentrate rapidly at threatened points. Speed of redeployment prevents effective counterfire." The Hellcat also saw action in the Pacific. The 637th Tank Destroyer Battalion deployed M18s to the Philippines campaign. Against the Japanese, whose armor presence was minimal, the Hellcat was used mainly for bunker busting and infantry support. The open turret, however, proved dangerous. Japanese troops often tried to throw grenades or satchel charges into the turret. Crews responded by welding improvised covers and adding chicken wire screens for defense. Although its speed allowed rapid responses to infiltration attempts, dense jungle terrain limited many of its advantages. The M18 was filled with innovations that set it apart. Torquematic automatic transmission. Developed by General Motors, it provided 3 forward speeds that shifted automatically based on speed and load. Drivers no longer had to manage clutching and shifting, allowing them to focus entirely on maneuvering, essential at high speed. Torsion bar suspension. With 14 inches of wheel travel, it allowed the Hellcat to maintain high speed even over rough terrain. Impacts that would have damaged older leaf spring suspensions were easily absorbed. Wright R975 radial engine, a 9-cylinder air-cooled aircraft engine that gave the Hellcat an exceptional power-to-weight ratio. Early C1 models produced 350 horsepower, while later C4 versions reached 400 horsepower. Air cooling removed the need for radiators and coolant, eliminating a common battlefield vulnerability. Hydraulic turret traverse. Driven by an electric motor powering a hydraulic pump, the system maintained a constant 15 degrees per second rotation speed, regardless of engine RPM or vehicle movement. This gave Hellcat crews a major edge over German manual traverse systems. The impact of the Hellcat went far beyond World War II. Although the U.S. tank destroyer force was disbanded in November 1945 and the doctrine itself abandoned, the M18's lesson, that mobility could substitute for armor, spread worldwide. The Soviet Union developed the PT-76 amphibious tank and later, the BMP infantry fighting vehicle, both emphasizing speed and maneuver. Britain created the CVRT reconnaissance series. France built the AMX-13, using an automatic loader to keep weight low. West Germany's Leopard 1 rejected heavy armor entirely, prioritizing speed. This represented a complete shift from World War II thinking. Modern wheeled tank destroyers, such as Italy's Centauro, Japan's Type 16, and America's M18 mobile gun system, all carried forward the Hellcat's philosophy, sacrificing armor for mobility and firepower. So why couldn't the Germans, known for tactical innovation, counter the M18 effectively? Several reasons stood out. German doctrine emphasized careful long-range gunnery. Crews had years of training in precision marksmanship, which was useless against opponents that refused to stay still. Their technology also worked against them. German turret traverse relied on engine RPM, which meant that at idle or low speeds their turrets moved painfully slowly. Against the Hellcat's consistent hydraulic traverse, German tanks were often helpless. And finally, there was the psychological factor. The speed, sudden strikes, and constant relocation of the Hellcat created confusion and shock among crews used to deliberate methodical combat. The M18 Hellcat, with its strengths and vulnerabilities, had permanently changed the way armies thought about armored warfare. German tank crews had long enjoyed dominance over most Allied armor. But when the M18 Hellcat appeared, the hunters suddenly found themselves the hunted. That shift in psychology was devastating. For tankers trained to be predators, realizing they were now the prey created a level of fear that can't be underestimated. Communication problems only made things worse. German radio networks, already disrupted by Allied jamming, couldn't keep up with the lightning speed of M18 platoons. Units found it nearly impossible to coordinate against opponents that struck, quickly disappeared, and reappeared from a new direction. In post-war interviews collected by the U.S. Army's Military History Institute, M18 veterans all pointed to speed as the single most important factor in survival. Staff Sergeant Vernon Miller of the 85th Tank Destroyer Battalion summed it up with 3 rules: shoot fast, move fast, think fast. He explained, "If you did all 3, you went home. If you failed at any one, you didn't." Technical Sergeant John Patterson of the 603rd Tank Destroyer Battalion added, "The Hellcat wasn't about fair fights. It was about stacking the odds in our favor. We'd hit the enemy where they didn't expect, when they didn't expect, and we'd be gone before they realized what happened." Private First Class Robert Chen of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion remembered the feeling every time he climbed into the Hellcat. "I knew I was sitting in a tin can, but it was a tin can that could run 55 mph. That speed saved my life more times than any armor could have." The numbers back up these memories. The Hellcat could hit a top speed of 55 mph, 88, 5 km/h on roads, and about 26 mph, 42 km/h across country. It could accelerate from 0 to 30 mph in just 11 seconds. With a range of 150 miles on 75 gallons of fuel and ground pressure of only 10.5 psi, it was lighter on the terrain than many trucks. In combat, the statistics told a mixed story. On average, each M18 destroyed 2.4 enemy tanks. The average survival time of a vehicle in combat was 67 days. Mechanical reliability was solid for a high-performance machine, averaging 200 miles between major maintenance. When a vehicle was destroyed, crew survival was an impressive 73%, much higher than in heavier tanks. This showed the trade-off. Thin armor made the M18 vulnerable, but its speed gave crews a better chance to survive. The Hellcat's influence went far beyond World War II. Its core ideas foreshadowed modern military concepts. The focus on fast, sensor-to-shooter engagement mirrored the M18's shoot-and-scoot tactics. Today's active protection systems, which intercept incoming rounds before they hit, echo the same principle. It's better to avoid damage than absorb it. Networked warfare, with units coordinating strikes from multiple directions, looked very much like the way M18 platoons operated. And the broader lesson of asymmetric response, defeating an enemy not by matching their strengths, but by negating them, was embodied in the Hellcat. The M18 Hellcat was one of the most innovative vehicles of the Second World War. Born from American industrial skill and tactical creativity, it flipped the rules of armored warfare. German crews who relied on thick armor and heavy firepower suddenly faced a machine that didn't play by those rules. The Hellcat's 55 MPH top speed wasn't just a number. It was a complete shift in doctrine. German training and tactics simply couldn't adapt in time. The Hellcat proved that survival in battle isn't always about having the heaviest armor or the biggest gun. Sometimes it's about being faster, smarter, and more adaptable. German crews saw their carefully aimed shots miss as the M18 vanished at high speed. They learned this lesson in the open fields of France, in the forests of the Ardennes, and in the last battles inside Germany. When military historians look back at the Hellcat today, they see more than a tank destroyer. They see an American design that challenged every assumption of the battlefield. German tankers never realized the M18 could reach 55 mph until they faced it in battle. By then it was too late. The Hellcat rewrote the math of armored combat. It proved that protection doesn't always require heavy armor, that lethality doesn't always need the largest gun, and that battlefield superiority could be achieved through speed and maneuver instead of mass. At 55 mph, the M18 didn't just outrun German tanks, it outran German doctrine itself. Even now its lessons echo through modern warfare. Every time a commander chooses speed over heavy armor, every time a designer accepts vulnerability to gain performance, the Hellcat's legacy is alive. The German tankers of the 113th Panzer Brigade, the 2nd Panzer Division, and countless others learned the hard way what happens when the battlefield changes faster than doctrine. The M18 Hellcat, 55 MPH of American boldness, remains living proof that in war speed can be the deadliest weapon of all.